With the new 2024 NHL season underway, all teams are aiming for a successful year, but the Vancouver Canucks are fixated on a goal that's eluded them for over 50 years, capturing their first-ever Stanley Cup. Through all the ups and downs, rebuilds, and near misses, the Canucks are fielding perhaps one of the most rounded rosters in the NHL. The core is strong, young talents are blossoming, and for the first time in years, the Canucks faithful are starting to believe. This could finally be the year their team bring the Stanley Cup to Vancouver for the first time. But are they really ready to take that next step? Before we move on, I'd like to ask you for a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It makes such a huge difference to our team. Thank you so much. Now back to the Canucks. The Canucks are a great team and they've had the talent to go all the way. They've had great seasons and even better playoff runs, but if there's one thing the Canucks have never had on their side, it's timing. But this year is different as everything seems to be aligning at the right moment. So, when the Canucks hit the ice for their preseason opener against the Seattle Kraken, something felt different. Although Vancouver had come out on top 3-1, it wasn't the scoreline that had the fans hyped. Rather, it was the feeling of optimism that hadn't been present in years. The intensity of the fights and the determination from both sides that made this feel more like a regular season encounter than a typical preseason warm-up. One thing was for sure, this wasn't just a game to the Canucks. It was a statement, and the message was loud and clear. We are done waiting. Unfortunately, their optimism was short-lived. Despite a win over the Oilers, they struggled through the rest of the postseason and have continued to face challenges since the start of this regular season. Nonetheless, there is still good reason to be hopeful. A number of the big players made an impact in the preseason. Recognizable in the blue paint was goaltender Arthur Silos. Silos, thought to be battling injury concerns, was as fit as can be in the nets, making huge saves early and often. Against the Kraken's pressure, Silos stood tall, proving he was ready to challenge Thatcher Demko for more playing time this season. This brings us to one of the biggest stories in the Canucks season: goaltending. There's no question that Demko is one of the best goalies in the league, but there's also no question that he hasn't been able to get fit. Can the Canucks really rely on Demko for a full season, and more importantly during the playoffs? I'm inclined to say no. But that's where Silos comes in, as he just might be the key to make a major difference in their season. This season, goaltending could very well become the ultimate X factor for the Canucks. When healthy, Thatcher Demko is one of the best goaltenders in the NHL, but with his fitness hard to predict these days, it's hard to enter the season with complete confidence. The Canucks are hopeful that Demko will be ready for opening night, but if he isn't, Arthur Silos has already proven he can handle the pressure. His breakout performance in last year's playoff was one of the most exciting stories of the postseason, and if he's called upon to do the same this time around, there's every reason to believe he can get the job done. But before we get too excited, let's talk about the returning stars. JT Miller and Elias Pettersson led the charge offensively last season, with Miller posting a career-high 103 points and Pettersson putting in his share of 89. But the real one to watch out for is Pettersson. The 25-year-old has grown to become a franchise cornerstone, and he is expected to exceed the 100-point barrier this season. Although JT Miller will also be counted on to repeat last season's career best of 103 points, don't be surprised when Elias Pettersson overtakes him in scoring this season. Lots of people believe his contribution offensively could get even higher than that, as his point tally can be the difference between an underwhelming Canucks season or a special one. And leading the Canucks defense is Quinn Hughes. The 24-year-old defenseman went on an incredible run last season at the blue line, winning the Norris Trophy and totaling 92 points, and he has only gotten better. Armed with elite skating together with playmaking ability and high hockey IQ, some even believe he could very well be the first defenseman to total 100 points. If Hughes can anchor the defense the way he has for the last couple of years, Vancouver will be a tough matchup for anyone. But that's where they have a problem. The Canucks have always relied a little too much on Hughes to save them. It can even be said that Vancouver is asking too much of him. But no team looking to lift the Stanley Cup has ever done so with a one-man defense. Yes, Filip Hronek was brought in to provide some relief, and while he's a solid player with 48 points last season, he's not a game-changer. Hronek's chemistry with Hughes has been promising, but is it enough to shut down the elite teams they'll face in the playoffs? I'm not convinced. That's why this offseason they have tried to bring in alternatives to reinforce the blue line. Derek Forbort was brought in for his size, shot blocking, and physicality. The other move the Canucks made to reinforce the blue line came via Tyler Myers' return, signing a far more affordable 3-year deal worth $3 million per year to remain a Canucks. While Myers certainly has his critics, his 6'8" frame and experience continue to make him a worthwhile asset in the defense. Should Myers ultimately find a consistent role in Tocchet's system, he can be a very strong piece to the Vancouver defense. But we're not just going to be focusing on the Canucks defense. While the team is loaded in offense with Miller and Pettersson, the depth of the offense is also important. The Canucks have depth, but the question is whether that depth can hold up in the postseason. They've got Brock Boeser, who after a couple of up-and-down seasons, finally got his breakout campaign last year, scoring 40 goals, including 16 on the power play. Some question if he could sustain such pace, but with a bit of luck, Boeser could even push for 50 this season. But luck doesn't win playoff games. So, Vancouver didn't sit on their hands with just their returning stars to get them over the hurdle, as they had some strong off-season moves to complement the roster. They brought in Danton Heinen, who is a versatile forward that can play up and down the lineup. Heinen has grown into a reliable two-way player, as his ability to chip in offensively while playing a strong defensive game fits head coach Rick Tocchet's system tremendously well. The Canucks also signed Kiefer Sherwood, who brings some grit, physicality, and a whole lot of hustle to the bottom six. Sherwood's addition adds much-needed depth to the Vancouver forward group. His willingness to take the tough minutes will be huge in the NHL season, which has shown how long and grueling it can get. With these off-season moves in place, it would seem more than ever that the Canucks have got themselves a dangerous team that can beat anyone on their best days. But one of the most exciting things about this Canucks team is the depth of young talent pushing for roster spots. Jonathan Lekkerimaki, Vancouver's 2023 first-round pick, has already made a big impression, picking up 2 assists in his preseason debut. His high hockey IQ and offensive instincts have many believing he could crack the lineup sooner rather than later. And Aatu Raty has been a revelation at the face-off dot and is showing signs he could be a permanent fixture on the Canucks' fourth line. With the physical rounding out of a perfect bottom six, a scoring touch, and defensive responsibility, he will be an important potential piece as the season chugs along. And let's not overlook the prospect pipeline of the Canucks. Players such as Tom Willander, a highly touted defensive prospect, and Archdeep Bains, a forward with scoring upside, will push for roster spots and can contribute sooner rather than later. But if there's one lingering question surrounding the Canucks, it's the depth in the back end. The top pairing of Hughes and Hronek is elite, but beyond that, there are some questions. The second pairing would likely be Carson Soucy and Tyler Myers. Soucy brings some physicality, and Myers, although having his detractors, still maintains the size and reach to be serviceable. Of course, this pairing must find some consistency, particularly against the league's better offenses. This third pairing of Derek Forbort and Vincent Deschernay adds a measure of size and grit, but there are questions as to whether that pair can hold up against quicker, more skilled opponents. If the Canucks want to make an extended run in the playoffs, they'll need their defense to hold firm during those key moments of the postseason. But with all these pieces in place, the big question will be, are the Vancouver Canucks finally ready to make a serious run at the Stanley Cup? The answer is almost. The Canucks are close, closer than they've been in years, but they're not there yet. They have the pieces, but they also have glaring weaknesses. The Canucks are loaded with one of the more talented cores in the league with Miller, Pettersson, Hughes, and Boeser, with much-needed depth and experience added through key off-season moves. That said, question marks remain, particularly on defense and in goal. Vancouver needs a healthy Thatcher Demko along with some consistency from those second and third defensive pairings if they're to seriously contend with the heavyweights of the Pacific Division. Still, the good news for Vancouver fans will be that the future is incredibly bright. Their young talents are growing fast, and the pieces are starting to fall in place. If their defense can hold up and Demko stays healthy, the Canucks have a legitimate shot at making noise in the playoffs. What do you think? Are the Canucks finally prepared to take that next step or still have some work to do? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more updates on the Vancouver Canucks. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe for more amazing hockey showdowns.